What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Athletic Asian Podcast. Happy Tuesday. I'm your host, Nathan Nguyen. Today we have a special guest to discuss some NFL. We know the draft is coming up in a couple of days. Very excited for that. Hopefully, my Giants make the right decisions this year. Last year, we did an amazing job, but this year, we need to nail our draft picks. So, without further ado, we welcome in Jon Kirkner of the Eye Test Podcast. You can follow him on YouTube or subscribe, I should say. John, first off, how you doing? Welcome to the podcast, and I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nate. It's going to be a good one.
Definitely, John. Just might as well get into it. Actually, before we get into it, I want to ask you: did you play any sports back when you were young, or do you still play any sports on the side
Yeah,
for fun?
I don't play any sports now, competitively. But when
Hmm.
I was a kid, I tried just about every sport, but the ones that I really stuck to were baseball and wrestling.
Okay.
I wrestled for probably about like 6 years through high school. Did a little bit of club wrestling in college, and then baseball was more so like on the intramural level. Never really played for a school just because I was so wrapped up in wrestling. Tried football in eighth grade. I was horrible. I was like 85 pounds in eighth grade. And they put me on the offensive line, third string right guard, just so I wouldn't play. So I was horrible at football. I had like one tackle. Everyone went crazy. And then I played a lot of hockey too, like second through sixth grade.
Hmm.
So yeah, I played a good amount of hockey.
All right. I think the fact that they put you at right guard at 85 pounds, yeah, they definitely.
They just didn't want me to play.
I feel like I was the same way because out of all the guys, because I played in high school football, my sophomore year and my senior year, I took a break junior year for some reason. They put me at running back, which was fine, but then also put me at corner, even though I never played defense before. But
Yeah.
like you said, it's probably because they didn't want me to play. But I ended up playing like when we were down like 50-0. They were like, "All right, go ahead and go in." I said, "All
Yep.
right, I guess." But the point is, at least we played sports in high school or when we were young, and we got some experience. And now you cover fantasy football, and I love it. It's great. Check it out, the Eye Test podcast. But might as well dive into it. Aaron Rodgers, after what weeks, months of speculation, the deal finally got done. If you guys don't know, the Green Bay Packers made a trade with the New York Jets as of yesterday, trading away their franchise quarterback Aaron Rodgers to the Jets. There's some other picks involved. Most notably, the number 13 pick will go to the Packers, and the number 15 pick in this year goes to the New York Jets. This is something that's been brewing for a long time. We knew Rodgers was going to the Jets, but it was just a matter of when, and it happened yesterday. But with Rodgers going to the Jets, you have Garrett Wilson at wide receiver. You have McCole Hardman joining them via free agency. Brees Hall coming back from injury on the at running back as well. Just a lot of guys to discuss from a fantasy football aspect, but specifically Rodgers, John. How does his outlook look like? Is he gonna be a top 10, top 15 fantasy quarterback, or should we temper our expectations just a little bit?
Well, he's definitely got better weapons in New York than he did in his final year in Green Bay, at least. So I do think that Aaron Rodgers will have a better year than last year. I mean, Garrett Wilson is just he's looking like a top five wide receiver after his rookie year. I think he's going to make a huge leap. I mean, he was only like he was in like the 20s, I think, for in terms of fantasy rankings for wide receiver. That was a little bit of surprise when the season ended. You go and look and you're like, oh wow, he seemed to be a lot better than that. 1,000 yards his rookie year. He won rookie of the year. So I think he's just going to make a huge jump, similar to like how CD Lamb did from his rookie to his sophomore year. And then Brees Hall, it seems like he got injured at the right time. He's going to come back healthy. He'll be able to do some training camp. And yeah, I think if they can address the offensive line in the draft, then the Jets are going to be a pretty deadly offense.
I agree because when you think about offensive line, you think Mekhi Becton, and Becton has gotten injured a lot this past few years in his career. When he's on the field, he's pretty solid, but you can't be solid when you're injured. So it's heading into this draft, I would think the Jets could use like a tight end of some sorts, but mentioning offensive line, they might dive into uh, the pool of players, which may include Paris Johnson from Ohio State, the offensive tackle, I believe.
Yeah, him, and, like, also, like, that first round swap is pretty big because there's a chance that the Jets, if they don't go the offensive line route, they could scoop one of the tight ends that the Packers also need, whether it's Michael May or Dalton Kincaid, so that could get pretty interesting. I think this draft is just gonna be, I don't think we know what's actually gonna happen. I mean, usually 3 days before the draft, you know who the first quarterback off the board is gonna be, and
Exactly.
first we thought it was Stroud, then we thought it was Young, and then Will Levis puts out this video of him throwing 60 yards on his knees, and now all of a sudden he's like a top favorite to go number one. So we have no idea. And then Anthony Richardson too. Like we don't even know. It's
Exactly.
crazy.
I saw it this morning too about the Levis thing. I was like, no way he's going number one. But isn't that exciting though? We don't know who's going to go number one.
It is.
Who-
Yeah, it's exciting and
exactly.
frustrating at the same time.
There's no like one prospect that makes you say, okay, he's definitely going number one. Like in basketball, for example, there's in the NBA, there's this guy called Victor Wembanyama. He's going number one next year in the NBA
Mm.
draft. But the NFL is just so much different that we just don't. Is it Bryce Young? Is it CJ Stroud? Is it some Will Anderson stuff like from the movie Draft Day when a defensive player got chosen first overall, even though he was like he was more down the draft board. It's just a complete debacle, but it's fun to look at into. But let's be honest, Will Levis isn't going number one.
Yeah,
The
who
Panthers.
do you think it's going to be? Young?
Uh, let's see. I do like CJ Stroud, but Bryce Young is just that type of guy. He's from Alabama, and I get it. People are like, oh, well, just because he's from Alabama doesn't mean he's going to go number one and be really good. Yeah, but Bryce Young has shown that I don't know. I like his traits. I do like his traits. Size, I get it. He's like, what, under 6 foot? No
Yeah,
one
that's
gives.
the only concerning
Yeah.
part. But we've seen so many quarterbacks, especially in this
Mhm.
day and age of the NFL, where small quarterbacks can make it.
Exactly. So, but in terms of the role of Rodgers situation, I do hope he succeeds. He's 39 years old. So,
Hmm.
the Jets may have found their guy, but they're gonna have to, hopefully find a quarterback once he retires. So maybe Zach Wilson remains on the roster. I really don't know about that because he's not going to be happy about being on the bench. But at the same time, he didn't really perform well
Yeah,
last season. So
exactly.
yeah, but John, we know that you know these NFL draft prospects the best out of everyone I know so far in terms of offense. Defensively, we could dive into that another time, but offense will focus right now because let's face it, offense wins championships. Now I'm just playing. We know defense wins championships,
You
but
think?
offense,
I don't know.
no, offense. I like offense. I
Yeah,
do
I
like
mean, the Super
offense.
Bowl last year showed that offense wins Super Bowls. So
Exactly. Yeah, this whole thing about defense wins games or championships. No, offense not only wins you championships, but also makes them more fun because
yeah,
we don't want to sit through a 6-3, 10-7 game. No one likes that. We want to see like shootouts, 52-49, or like you said, the Super Bowl last season, we saw Jalen Hurts and Mahomes just go back to back in terms of touchdowns and whatnot. That was fun.
yeah.
So, covering offensive prospects will definitely be something I want to cover today. And the first question I have for you is this: in terms of offensive prospects, who are your favorites? I have some for me, but who are your favorite offensive prospects in this year's draft?
Well, should I say the obvious and like Bijan Robinson? Or are you looking for something more interesting than that?
Let's start with Bijan Robinson because I know a lot of people have a lot of fascination with him. I heard he's been compared to a Saquon Barkley, which is something that's really cool to me because the Giants have Saquon
Yeah,
Barkley. Uh, not to be biased here and say, oh, Bijan Robinson is going to be a top 5 running back, but it seems like a lot of people are saying he's going to be really good. So why is that?
I mean, he can run the ball, he can catch the ball, and he can block. So he's got so many opportunities to be on the field for every play. Um, he's one of the 3 blue chip players in the first round. So I mean that says something.
Mhm.
He's the only offensive blue chip player. So I think that's pretty big. And then if I were to bring my bias into it, he's projected to get drafted by the Eagles. So
Okay.
Bijan is just so interesting to me, and I became attached to him, towards the end of his final year at Texas, and didn't even think that it would be an opportunity to land in Philadelphia. Once the Eagles moved on from Miles Sanders, they brought in Rashad Penny, so I was like, maybe it's not going to happen. But then the rumors just started to swirl, and I mean, Bijan is just one of a kind, man. It's a lot of and like people who are surrounded in the sports industry are saying that it's just not smart to draft a running back that high in a draft. But that's if it's not Bijan Robinson. He's projected to go top 10 for a reason. And Saquon was too, and Christian McCaffrey and Zeke and Todd Gurley, all those players, and they had great careers. So Bijan is also like the most bust-proof player in the whole entire draft. So that says something. I'm surprised if he doesn't go earlier before 10 because it looks like the Falcons are interested in him too.
I think the one question is, if he's so good, why aren't teams choosing him in top five? Is it just because of the narrative that you don't choose a running back in the top five, like we've seen a few years ago, or are there other prospects better than Bijan? Because let's think about it. Let's say Carolina, right? You have Miles Sanders, yeah.
Mhm.
I guess number 2 is Houston, Damian Pierce, yeah. Number 3 is the Bears, isn't it?
3 is going to be the Cardinals or the Colts, maybe. There's going to be a trade for the number 3 spot. It looks like the Titans could get the number 3, Colts, or the Titans, Colts, or the Cardinals.
Okay. So I guess.
The Bears moved back to 9.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would probably make sense then, because the teams in the top 5.
But I got the answer for you here. This is why like Bijan's not going earlier. What do all those teams have in common? Panthers, Texans, Colts, losing records.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you never see a team that went to the Super Bowl have the number 10 pick. So the team that goes to the Super Bowl, they have a pretty well-rounded team, right? They don't have that many holes to fill. So that's why it's looking like the Eagles are projected to get Bijan, because they have the luxury to do it, and they have 2 first-round picks.
That is true.
So these teams like the Panthers, Texans, Colts, the Raiders, those teams are horrible. They can't start rebuilding with a running back. And I hate to say it, although Saquon is super good, the Giants chose Saquon at a time where they didn't have all the pieces to be successful. So yeah, Saquon's had a successful career, but the Giants are slowly getting better. But in his prime years, his rookie, sophomore year, you didn't see much success with the Giants. But I will say Giants are looking very competitive now, and they had a great draft last year.
Mm-hmm.
So that is definitely something to note. But yeah, those teams, they're not going to pick Bijan because they know that probably isn't going to get them into the playoffs. They can have Bijan, but if they don't have a good offensive line or a good defense, then their team's just not going to win.
I agree. I think this is, for the Eagles, like you mentioned, this is the perfect scenario. It's like, okay, we have a top 10 pick because we made the right decisions. We made the Super Bowl last year. Our offensive pieces are still in depth. We still have a outstanding quarterback who we just re-signed. We have a great offensive line. Jason Kelsey's back, which is great. Our wideouts are still there, and A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. They're going to get better. We just need a running back. Yeah, you could talk about, Eagles fans could be like, we have Boston Scott, or we have Kenneth Gainwell. Yeah, but you need a really, really good running back, and Bijan is that guy. So the Eagles, I think if you're an Eagles fan, you feel pretty good, because as a Giants fan myself, when we drafted Saquon number 2 in 2017 or 18, whatever the case may be, the team wasn't complete. Like you didn't have a star wide receiver like the Eagles, so you don't have a star tight end or offensive line that's really good. Defensively, you still had issues, but choosing number 2 overall, and all the fans are saying we want Saquon, we want like a playmaker. You had to get him, or else the New York media is probably going to be on your back. So It was more of a emotional choice, I think. But I'm grateful.
Yeah, Saquon's great to have.
Exactly.
But now you're doing the rebuilding now, as opposed to before. So the Eagles love to focus on the trenches. That was like their thing. Draft the offensive line, the defensive line. We have that. So Bijan is a good fit.
Definitely. In terms of quarterbacks, do you like? You asked me about Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, but do you like Young or Stroud, or is there someone else that you think is better than them? I mean, I doubt it, but in terms of quarterbacks,
so I mean, my top 3 quarterbacks are going to be Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and then Hendon Hooker, actually, in that order. Yeah, that's my sleeper of the whole draft in terms of quarterbacks. I think he's not going to get drafted before Levis or Richardson. He could get drafted before one of them, not both.
Okay.
But yeah, I really like Hendon Hooker.
Well, why is that though? Because from the mock drafts I've seen, Hooker's going like third, maybe fourth round at times. And when you think of quarterbacks, you think of Richardson or a Levis before a Hooker. Why is that?
So in the mock draft, in fantasy mock drafts, he's going third or fourth round
I would
for the
say,
NFL.
um, in terms of the NFL mock draft, I would say he's going third or fourth. But in terms of a fantasy aspect, I can't really say with 100% certainty.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
in fantasy mock drafts and dynasty superflex leagues, he's looking at like an early second round, possibly late first round. So he's like projected around like the 2.1 to where like the 2.4, like early second. And then in a couple of mock drafts that like Mel Kiper and these guys have been doing, they've got like the Seahawks doing some trades to get into the end of the first round and grabbing Hendon Hooker. So I think if if like draft capital says a lot about a player. So if Hendon Hooker were to fall down to the second or third round of the NFL draft, then yeah, my opinion would probably change. But seeing these mock drafts and seeing that Hendon Hooker is like a pretty high prospect, if teams are trading to get him in the first round, that says a lot about what these NFL experts think, and they know way more than I do. I'm just going off of what the experts are saying
mm-hmm.
and what they're showing rather. You don't hear much chatter about Hendon Hooker. He's old. He's coming off an ACL injury. Played in college for like 5 years, but old for a quarterback is Aaron Rodgers, 39. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he's 25. He's not a running back. So that's like I disregard that. The the cons of Hendon Hooker are the ACL injury and the fact that he played in like a Tennessee offense. They get a lot of slack for some reason for like their offensive scheme. I don't watch a ton of college football. I mainly just keep up with the stars, and then I dive into college football in the off season.
Mm-hmm.
So as we get ready for the draft and dynasty leagues. So yeah, I mean, I just think that Will Levis and Anthony Richardson are like home run hitters where they could be booms or they could be busts. You're not going to get like a solid like high floor with them. But Hendon Hooker, if he has a year behind Geno Smith or Kirk Cousins, or he's projected to get drafted by the Rams behind Matt Stafford, those are all good quarterbacks to learn from and then have success maybe 1 or 2 years down the road.
I like that perspective. I want to say one thing. I don't want him going to the Rams because I just feel they're gonna have like a massive rebuild. Don't I feel
I
like that
agree. The
because
Rams would be the worst place for Hooker to land out of those three that I listed.
I mean, plus, do the Rams even have a first round pick? They don't have a first round pick this year, right? They had to trade that away. I think.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm just looking at like one of Mel Kiper's mock drafts has them trading in. So like I think we're gonna see a lot of trades. So Um, people are
the
going after these quarterbacks, man. Hendon Hooker has been a hot topic over like the last week or two.
That's the beauty of the NFL, man. We just don't know what's going to happen. But
Yeah,
Hooker in the article talked about how he wouldn't give himself a ranking, but in terms of the guys on the list, he would say he's number one. So his ability to create plays with his legs, his arm is good as well. I think for me, it's just a shocker of how, despite a torn ACL, teams are saying, "Hey, let's trade up for this guy." It's like, wait a minute, but he has a torn ACL. Yeah, it doesn't matter. We still want him. That's like, why? But based off his productivity in college, you mentioned his age, how that doesn't really factor in as much because he's not a running back. If Rodgers can play till he's 39, if Tom Brady can play till he's 45, then Hooker can play regardless of his age. And not to say Hooker's going to be a Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, but in terms of prospects, he should be regarded higher. So, along with me, as well as many other fans, we should be maybe paying more attention to Hooker, maybe watching some Hendon Hooker film before
mhm.
Thursday's draft.
Yeah,
I should probably be doing that as well. But definitely a shocker, but a great perspective from you in terms of that. But there's no doubt Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, they're going 1-2 in terms of quarterbacks off the board, and then after that, it's just a matter of who's going to go after.
yeah,
I do want to say in terms of the Raiders, we know for sure they're not getting a quarterback unless something surprising happens because they signed Jimmy G to that contract. So maybe they should dive into Hooker, maybe give him a year or two because Jimmy G's there for 3 years. It wouldn't hurt to get Hendon Hooker at that specific position at 7.
yeah. Especially, I mean, even if Hooker can find a way to slide down to the beginning of the second round, they can get him at the 2-7. I don't think the Raiders would reach on Hooker at the 1-7. They
Okay.
definitely are looking to get some defensive players or maybe like an offensive lineman. That's kind of the route that I think they're going to go. But let's be honest, the Raiders don't make smart draft decisions at all.
Exactly.
So whatever pick they choose, it's going to be the wrong one.
Like you have the normal GM, you have the smart GM, and then you have the Raiders
Yeah, right.
decision making that because you just didn't. I think they chose like a defensive player like fourth overall when they had that particular pick a few years ago, even though he could have been chosen like later in the draft. It was just Clinton Farrell was his name,
Yeah,
defensive player, but
bust.
I think he's with SF now or
Yeah, you
something. I
don't
don't
even.
know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no one even cares. It's this defense. Like we said, we care about the offense. But this upcoming season, we can predict that Bryce Young, Stroud. I know this is like I keep repeating myself in terms of those two guys, but I'm enamored as well as many others about those two guys. But do you see one of those two, or both, or another rookie quarterback that could be a top 15 fantasy performer this season, or do you think they all need like some time to develop?
Well, it's a good question. I think both need time to develop. Top 15 is kind of pushing it. Um, I guess if I had to pick, it would be Young if he were drafted by the Panthers. But there's another situation where Stroud could be drafted by the Texans, and then the Texans also get Jackson Smith-Jigba at the 12. So then my stock on CJ Stroud goes up if they get JSN. So there's a lot of things that have to happen. My opinion is going to be different next week after the draft.
Mm-hmm.
This is all speculation here. But if we were to play it out on how like a lot of the mock drafts are playing, Young goes to the Panthers, Stroud goes to the Texans, and then if that's it, if there were no other picks made, I would say that Young does better than Stroud his rookie year.
But
Seems like
here's
they
the
got more weapons. They got Miles Sanders. They brought in Adam Thielen, and then who's the wide receiver? The other wide receiver that they brought in? Oh,
uh,
Ark. So that looks pretty nice, right? Hayden Hurst at tight end. That's
there you
not
go.
super bad. Yeah, I mean, they're not ideal landing spots. Tell you that much. I don't think any of these quarterbacks are going to. None of these early quarterbacks are going to get drafted by like a team with a lot of weapons. Will Levis to the Colts is interesting because you got Pittman and Jonathan Taylor.
That is true. Yeah.
Good, better coaching staff too. So if Will Levis is better than I think, then Will Levis could have a good rookie season with those weapons.
But I think with the Houston thing, there's multiple reports saying that they're not going to go quarterback. I'm not saying
I
that I believe.
know
Yeah,
that's the
but
crazy
why
part.
is it no? If you're a Texans fan, you got to be frustrated or pissed off because nowhere you're going into August, September with no offense. Obviously I'm no one to talk. I was a third string running back / cornerback in high school, but you're not going to 2023 with not Will Levis, what's his name? Davis Mills.
Yeah.
You can't, right?
No, to answer your question, no. I'm wondering if there's going to be a trade between the Texans and the Titans where like the Texans get like Tannehill and they give up. I don't know. There's going to be some crazy because Tannehill's trade rumors are swirling around. Derrick Henry trade rumors are swirling around. So like that could be interesting for the because the Titans are totally moving on from Malik Willis. Like they've given up on.
Already?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's rumors that they're going to trade up to the 3 spot or the 2 spot and get a quarterback. So like it's very obvious what they think of Malik Willis, and if they do that move, if they want to move up into the first 3 picks, they're going to have to go into full rebuild and get their rookie quarterback. I mean, that's going to be the smartest move if they go that route.
So they don't believe in developing Willis. I like Willis. I
Yeah.
like. I get it. He came from Liberty University, wherever that is. But like,
Yeah.
shouldn't you develop? It's been only a year, and you thrust him into an offense last season. It was crap.
Yeah.
It really was. I mean, yeah, his job was just to hand it off to Derrick Henry. Like, I could do it, John. You could do it. You could snap the ball, just give it to your running back. You could do that, right? Just
Yeah.
I just don't see why you want to give Willis time to develop.
Like I said, I don't know everything, but I follow what the experts are showing in their behavior. And if they're talking about getting a quarterback, then it's very clear that they don't think much of Malik Willis.
Damn. You might as well just trade Malik Willis to Houston at this point because
they probably rather have Davis Mills. I'd probably take Davis Mills over Malik Willis.
I don't know. I can't picture myself being a fan of a team that has Davis Mills at quarterback.
Me neither. No, that
I
would
just
be,
can't.
If I was a Texans fan, I would be screaming for some quarterback that is highly projected to do well.
Exactly. Just get someone. Get I don't know, a CJ Stroud. Maybe it's like a smokescreen, and then Houston goes number 2, and they choose draft the quarterbacks. Okay, great. Phew. They were just trying to trick people. They failed in doing that, but at least they got their guy. Unless they wait till like the 5th round and draft like a Tanner McKee from Stanford. I'm just spitballing a random name that I saw.
No, you're right. There are a lot of like you said, smoke screens, especially as we get closer to the draft. It's all strategy. These owners are playing chess with the other owners. They're making up these rumors to have them not have their eyes on the actual target. So I see it. I totally understand. But it's hard to ignore the rumors because they're fun to talk about.
Exactly. So we covered quarterbacks, we covered running backs, we covered a little bit of tight end earlier. I think he said Michael Mayer when we talk about the Aaron Rodgers situation. I like him as well from Notre Dame. My last question before we go, John, is this: I love wide receivers. I am big fan of them this year. I love a Jordan Addison, who I really hope falls to 25, like really, really bad. But you have a Quentin Johnson. Yeah, you have a Quentin Johnson from TCU. You have Jackson Smith and Jigba from Ohio State. You have Zay Flowers, who is rumored to Kansas City a lot. I mean, he worked out with Patrick Mahomes. So, yeah, just give Mahomes all, the more weapons for him, great. Save some for the rest of us, right? But out of those 4 guys and Flowers, Smith and Jigba, Addison, and Johnston from TCU, who do you like the best?
JSN by a mile. Yeah, I mean, listening to the head coach of Ohio State talk about his top wide receivers, and he actually ranked them. And you never hear coaches do that when they get asked that question, like, who were your favorite wide receivers to coach? They always beat around the bush. And he answered that so honestly, and it was really cool to see. He had Marvin Harrison at number 1, JSN at 2, and then Terry McLaurin, and then Chris Olave at 4.
Wow.
And I mean, for JSN to be in an offense with Olave and Garrett Wilson was in that list too. I forgot to mention that, but he was on an offense with those 2 star receivers, and he still put up amazing production. The big concern with him, if there is one, is like he played 3 games his final year. But
that's the thing. Yeah, I'm like,
if he's projected this high again, that shows that it's not a factor. And he had an amazing combine. Everyone was concerned with his speed. I think he had a pretty decent, not one of the fastest, but a pretty decent 40 time. And I mean, just great contested catches. He's an absolute body. He's going to be a red zone target. So the question is if he gets drafted by the Texans, who's their quarterback?
Exactly.
So Quentin Johnson, I'm getting lower and lower on as we get closer to the draft, just because it seems I'm huge on draft capital. So if a wide receiver that, say, a month ago was projected to go in like the teens or the early 20s, and now he doesn't get it even invited to the first round. He's not even invited to the first round on Thursday night because they don't want to have any awkward moments if he were to fall out of the first round, which is crazy that they care about that. I mean, he's a professional player. He should probably start dealing with awkward moments and pressure.
Yeah.
But that's a red flag for me. If he's going to slip by all these teams that clearly need a receiver in like the 20s, we're talking the Ravens, the Vikings could use one if they let go of Thielen. The Chargers, they might be trading Keenan Allen. They could use a wide receiver. The Giants, the Bills. I mean, so many teams in the 20s need a wide receiver. If Quentin Johnson does not get drafted by one of those teams, that's a bad sign. So Zay Flowers, I'm huge on. I think my order would be JSN and then Zay Flowers. Coming out of a smaller school, again, some people don't really like that, but I believe he declared early for the draft, which is a good sign. And he's just climbing the draft boards of all these experts. So I'm pretty big on Zay Flowers.
Okay. All right. And look, if Johnston falls, that's great for the teams that, towards the end of the first round. But like you said, if he falls to the second round, that does cause concern because you look at him, he's like 6'3", 6'4", I believe is his height. He's an X receiver. You put him on the outside, he could help you win those 50-50 balls, in my opinion. But if he's falling, like you mentioned, that's a cause for concern. Something
the big problem that these scouts were listing for Quentin Johnson was that he has a ton of body catches. He's not high pointing the ball. So that is a concern, but that's pretty fixable. Do you remember the Jamar Chase rumors before his rookie season where it's like he can't catch the ball because there's no white line on the football? Like that made people not draft him in dynasty leagues, and he fell a couple spots down the first round where he should have been like a 1-2. He was getting drafted at like the 1-5. And whoever was in the middle of the draft got super lucky because you have an all-time talent. So you got to be careful with these rumors. You can't hone in on them and not focus on the obvious stuff. Quentin Johnson was a playmaker in the red zone, could go deep ball. He's averaging 18 yards a catch or something crazy like that. So if he can learn how to high point the ball and not catch with his body, then he would be a pretty deadly target.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens with that. The NFL draft is, as we record this, 2 days away. Very excited for what our teams have in store. Wait, I didn't ask you, John. Do you have a favorite football team? I assume you do. I just don't know who it is.
Oh, yeah, it's the Eagles.
Oh, that's why you're high on Bijan at 10.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I made sure I pointed that out. That's why when all these mock drafts have Bijan going to the Eagles. So I am on cloud 9 right now until we don't pick him. Then I'm going to be super upset.
You know how frustrating it is for a Giants fan to watch our team face the Eagles twice a year? You know how ridiculous that is? Okay, I get
You guys give us trouble. One out of the 2 games, you guys tend to give us some type of struggle. I think so. It's a divisional rival. So those games are always, the Eagles are probably favored, but it's not like we're stomping on you guys.
I would say I think the first in the playoffs, that was terrible. I remember the last season, the first game we played you guys in the regular season, it was pretty ugly. The second game, obviously, we had backups in there. Mm-hmm. The Eagles had to, try to actually play to clinch the number 1 seed.
I think pressure was on us.
Exactly. For us, it was just like, okay, we put our backups in. No one cares. And the playoffs came around. You don't know the excitement I had in myself when we made the playoffs and we beat the Vikings. I'm like, oh my God, we get the Eagles. We play them twice. We don't, usually when you're a division team, you don't get beaten by your rival 3 times. It doesn't happen. And then we get blown out. And honestly, that was.
I did have the Giants beating the Vikings. They won me a lot of money that night. So,
really?
Yeah. And they were big underdogs. And I was like, I'm taking the Giants here. The Vikings always choke in the playoffs, and the Giants are the hot team. So in the first round, you got to go with the hot team.
I'm glad you guys. I'm glad you got
I was
something.
a Giants fan for a couple hours. Don't you worry.
I'm glad you got something from us, but from an Eagles perspective, I hate to say this probably will cause some stir amongst Giants fans who watch or listen to this podcast, but I do really love Jalen Hurts. He's just someone you can't hate him. He's very mature. He's very proper. He doesn't really, he's not cocky. He's a great leader, and I'm really glad he got re-signed to that big contract. And it obviously still has, in terms from a cap space perspective, there's still some room for the Eagles to maybe sign someone else, I believe, or obviously sign their rookie class this year, which will include Bijan Robinson, unless something magical happens and some team jumps up in front of the Eagles and drafts Robinson. I think it's safe to say he's going to the Eagles because.
Oh God, I don't want to hear that yet. What about the Falcons, man? The Falcons love running the ball, and they're at the 8 spot, so there's a chance they could do it.
Ooh. They don't like the running backs they have. They can stick with the running backs they have.
They drafted last year, and he ran for 1,000 yards his rookie year. So that's really their Cordell Patterson. He's kind of a man in the past now. So it's really just Tyler Algier, and if they got Bijan, that would be a pretty deadly running back core.
We just have to hope then that that Bijan falls just a couple more spots down to Philly, and then we're chilling. We're chilling. Jon Kirkner of the Eye Test podcast. By the way, John, before we go, do you want to discuss what your podcast is about?
Yeah. So our main goal is just to make fantasy football easy for the fantasy manager, because a lot of times people make fantasy very hard on themselves. They dive in on all these very specific stats and they focus on it too much. We just go off of what we see, what we hear, and that's where we got the name the Eye Test. So our main goal, we kind of just it sounds like we're just a bunch of dudes talking around a table or in the living room, around a fire. This is very casual conversation. Not many stats are said. It's mainly about just what we see and how we feel.
All right. I love it, John. Well, thank you for stopping by. We appreciate it. I'm looking forward to hearing more from you. If you guys haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to John on YouTube, the Eye Test podcast. You can find that on there as well. And as always, we are proud to say we're partnered with Fanatics, the official partner of the Authentication Podcast, your one-stop shop for all your sports fan gear needs. Whether you need Giants gear, Eagles gear, Cowboys gear, no one needs Cowboys gear, let's be honest. Or even Commander. No one needs Commanders gears. No.
Yeah, they're not even going to be called the Commanders in a couple years. So just
exactly.
they actually have a name.
We all call them the football team because we're so used to that still.
Yeah, right.
But yep, they're the official partner of our podcast. So make sure if you guys need any jerseys, men's, women's, kids, accessories, stop by Fanatics, your one-stop shop for all your sports fan gear needs. Jon Kirkner, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And hopefully we can discuss more in the future, maybe towards the beginning of the season. Maybe your rankings have changed in terms of a fantasy football aspect. I might need some assistance because I'm in a pretty big league this year with 12 people. Or is it 12 people or 10? I'm not sure. But money's involved. And when money's involved, I'm not trying to lose. So I might need your advice later on before the season begins. But thank you, John. I appreciate you. I'm looking forward to talking with you soon.
Yep. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.